So these were the way runners. They paid the price. They paid the price. We call them scabs, but they paid the price. The women came from Africa, they paid the price. We have no right to boast, okay? As a human matter, we have no right to boast about the scab, because he led the way. Somebody always got to be the John the Baptist. They go in like the children of Israel. They paid 40 years in the wilderness. So they were the way runners. You know, they did the hard work. My dad finished 52 years in the coal mine, right here in this part. Most of his years was done right here. And my daddy worked here. His dad was at my dad's funeral. My dad was older than his dad. But you know, they would push the old miners to the side. So he was able in his last years to come in and work with Mr. Hood and Mr. Hall and those men. And so they had an opportunity to know him. But let me tell you who my dad was. When my dad came to the state of West Virginia, he came down through the lower part of the state. He started out around McDowell County.
All right.
His sister was born from McDowell County. And they came in, but state of Illinois was harmed organizers. My dad could not tell he was an organizer for the youth. He came in. He had to do. And so as they came into the state, you know, then their job was to go to the coal fields and these miners to try to get them to come out through and come out of those work holes. You're not going to live in there. So you have to go. So some was fortunate enough, but a man got to do what a man got to do. He must do what he has to do.
That's right.
Now, it's his choice to go into those coal mines, and he want to work there. Do we have the right to go in here and just make him? No. The union said they had to go in there and try to talk to the guys. Because you can't go in and make anybody do anything. But sometimes there's less unfortunate things that happen like this. And it not only happened here, this happened all around the coal field in different areas. But let's go back to what happened here in Evansville. Remember, it was due to the union was organizing and the strikers was over here. But you hear the name that was dropped, Joseph Kennedy. Do we all know who Joseph Kennedy is?
All right.
Okay. Is he not the son of the president? For y'all who don't know, especially young people, he was the father of President Kennedy.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it, he was the father of President Kennedy. He owned the mine.
Right here.
So there was turmoil going on in the mine. And then all at once, boom, there was the mine blew up. Okay? But these are when everybody to know that this was the way runner. They came in, as my father came in through the South in 27, they landed in the state, in the bottom of the state. The organizers also, they had to come through this part of the state and to try to get those men organized. Anybody know Fred Stubbs? Fred Stubbs was an organizer. And there was other men in this area, they was organized. Some was in the undercover, and then you had some that worked in the mine along with trying to organize the mine. So these guys made a way for the coal miners today to make as much money as they're making today. These miners are going on. They paid the ultimate price. They didn't get the money, but they got the death. Only thing we can do for them is those names, as we take them back to our hearts, look up and say, thank you, Lord, especially you coal miners that work in the mine. And we should not feel bad because we lose people in the struggle along the way. Let me tell you, I'm fortunate enough to be one of those women who worked in the movement, and I worked with coal miners. I was fortunate enough to work with Arnold Miller. He was not a smart man. Arnold Miller was not a smart man. He was not a smart president, you know? And you got Tony Boyle and those other men that were not smart men. I knew a smart man. His name was Fred Carter. He worked at Black Lung. A lot of y'all don't know, he worked at Black Lung. was not a lawyer, but he was smart as anybody's lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
And he worked a black lung in this area. And when we had meetings enough, and I was one of the, was fortunate enough to be one of the black lung counselors in this area. And there's a lot of things that happen during the coal field that people don't know. And that is, as Arnold Miller and those other men who came along as presidents, and they just put them in there. And so that didn't help alleviate the problems that we have. So my friend, which was Fred Carter, decided that he was going to run for the president of the union. Oh my Lord, what did he do that for? A bomb took place then. There's a bomber now, but a bomber took then. They really got him. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
The man had 2 heart attacks. I tried to tell him they was going to dig up his mom and his grandma, but he wouldn't believe me. They dug up everything you name. So for his own protection, because he was having problems from the Ku Klux Klans and a lot more of them, because he was running for the president of the union at that time. And he had a gun, and he was going, he forgot it was in his briefcase, and he went into the courthouse with it. That's all they needed. That's all they needed to know that he had a gun in his possession. And that kind of destroyed that movement where he wanted to go in there and become the president of UNW. But he was also, he worked the mine, he knew the mine. His brother probably hold a record in Clarksburg, West Virginia right now for the man who loaded the most coal in this area. His last name was Carter. So, you know, there's a history. Because I'm a female listening, I fought hard. You know, I've been to houses in Kentucky, in Highland, Kentucky, and all of those areas where those coal mine struggles. And you think you all had trouble in this area? Kentucky, Lord. Ed, you know, Ed and those places down there in McDowell County and all of those counties, those people really fought for what they believed in. You know, there used to be a lot of rank and file in this area, but look what they did. Look what we have now. Look what just happened to West Virginia. Only because, I want black people to know, only because we don't have rank and file today.
All right.
We don't have rank and file today. Most of the black coal miners are not. There is hardly no black coal miners, okay? There's no bosses. How many bosses do we have? I bet you go to the state up to West Virginia right now, you can't find 10. You wouldn't be able to find 10 bosses in the mine. That's terrible. That's terrible. So now, what we need to do, and this is me, and I was fortunate enough, like I say, to be out there where Arnold Miller done met him, and some of the rest of them done met him, and I know these are not smart people. They were just white. And that meant that they was favored. And sometimes when you're favored, it only means that we all need a lesson. I say we need a lesson because nobody's greater than nobody better than anybody. God just put us where our skin is a little toned, but to working together, togetherness. And that's what West Virginia needs, more togetherness.
Yeah.
It ain't about black and white, it's about togetherness.
Right.
Now, if you want to leave us out, you're going to get what you got today.
Sure.
You're going to get what you got today. And that is, we're going to be heard. Now, whether it's going to be in the church, whether it's going to be in the community, or whether it's going to be in the regional or district, we're going to be heard. It's only 3% they said we got. Well, we're going to go after our 3% because we got to be heard.
That's right.
All right.
You know, those miners that having no problems these days in those mines, and I know it's still going on, because I used to be the black lung rep in this area, and I have known a many coal miner, I have sat in a many coal miner meeting, and I knew a lot of coal miners, black and white, because I was trained by some of my white brothers and sisters. So we were out there on the farm line, and I know what's going on. So what I would like to see, and always, and this is what the concept, and I'm glad I'm part of this committee, and that is that through them, through these people, that we're memorializing today, that something good would come out of it. Keep them always close to your heart. They deserve it. They didn't have a chance to raise families. And some of them are 20, 19 years old. Do you know what that means? They gave it up early. So that means that we owe them at least gratitude.
That's right.
We owe them at least gratitude. And this is what it is about. It's not black or white. We don't want to see that. We just, it's like a family. We appreciate you. And to them, my hat or whatever goes out to them, and my word of thank you goes to them. And to all the future brothers that worked in the mine, I know you all had a hard time too, and my heart go out to you. But for our sisters that want to work and know, had fathers worked in the mine, brothers worked in the mine, husbands worked in the mine, nephews worked in the mine, and uncles that worked in the mine. And now, to get our sons educated enough, there's good money in that mine, good money being paid out, good money, to get our sons, to make them aware, don't die in the streets. Don't die in the streets.
All right.
If you're going to make that money and you're not getting anything, and that other money that they're getting now is not equal to a man's life. At least these men gave an honorable and did an honorable thing. They didn't ask to die in that coal mine. And I would like to thank everybody, but I want you, as you lay down and as you go out, it's not about us, it's about them. And it's what we do as brothers and sisters that carry it on. And I'd like to thank you.
Have I been inspired by all that I've heard on today? I'm coming from another end. I was a coal miner's daughter too. And I lost my father in the mine. So I have a different perspective, but I didn't know what all the miners were going through. All I know was my daddy was my king. And he supplied all of my needs. Then one day at school, they came and said, you kids gotta go home. At that time we walked home. It was about a mile up the road. So we thought we were privileged kids. I don't need this. We thought we were privileged kids because we got a day off at school. So we was just so happy that we didn't have to stay in school. We didn't know what had happened. So we was walking along the railroad track going home from school. It was 5 of us. We was just so glad that we didn't have to go to school that day. On the way home, we met an old person that was walking along the road. He said, you kids hurry home. Something happened to your dad. Then we got scared. What could have happened to Dad? Got home, and that's when we got the news. My daddy was killed in the coal mine, in a slate fall. Nobody was killed but my dad? Just my dad? I thought that was very strange. Because you hear about, things happening in the coal mine. And it's usually more than one person. But he was killed in a slate fall. So for a while, all I could think of, Daddy's not coming home no more. I was 8 years old, 1948. He's not coming home no more? Oh, we won't get any more beatings with the mining bill. That was my first thought. But Daddy did so much good till it outweighed the bad. So after a while, I got to crying. I'd go to sleep crying at night. I want my daddy back. I want my daddy. I want my daddy back. So I didn't know about praying, but I kept asking God, please bring my daddy back. Please bring my daddy back. So one night in a dream.
We're at the home here of Mr. Edward Cabell, longtime resident of West Virginia. Could
Lifelong.
you lifelong? Could you give us a background?
A part of it.
Could you give me some predecessors to the kind of work that you're doing? People that, when you first started out, that you might have read from to get an understanding of African American or Negro contributions to.
You know, Ken Hart and Crap. What Carter G. Woodson had
Like,
in the around about 1916, I believe it was, the Journal of Negro History, and he had written an article, Black People in Appalachia. Carter G. Woodson, wow, spent time in West Virginia. How a lot of his career was.
he was born here, though, wasn't he? Carter G. Woodson.
No, he was not born here. No, he was not born in West Virginia. But he spent some early years in West Virginia, around the area of Huntington, and he worked around the coal mines and stuff in that part of the state. And he was the principal of Douglas High School in DeKalb County, which was the place was Huntington, and he was associated at one time as administrator. He was not the president though of West Virginia State College, now West Virginia State University.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you a question. I guess, and in part, it's a follow-up from some of the same types of questions that I asked the former Center for Black Culture Director, Catherine Bancole. And the questions that I asked her referred to the status of black people in West Virginia, and the status in terms of our general status. I mean, is West Virginia the kind of place where black people can come and expect parity in terms of the quality of life they received here in this area?
Well, it would have to be a black person that was in a state of disillusionment, because that's what they would happen to them when they got here. West Virginia is a very strange state. In fact, among historians of West Virginia is often called the bastard child of a political rape, since every inch of West Virginia came out of Virginia, and there are those scholars and others who state that West Virginia is more northern. I beg to differ. West Virginia is like the rest of the mountain south, and while it has some variations in the way the people think and the way they approach black people, it's still the South.
Right.
And because of the coal mines, well, let's not even go that far. There are very few slaves in Western Virginia, which is what West Virginia actually is. They picked the right name, West Virginia, because it is the western part of Virginia. And although it may be a separate state now since June the 20th, 1863, the same year as the Emancipation Proclamation, it became a state that in some ways reflected northern values in some places that people have confused that it is still different from the South. It's not that different. I come from a family that has had, maybe 200 years of association with West Virginia. And the people here, how would you say it? Probably put it in succinct words. You say, they talk one thing and they do another.
Now, you talking about the establishment, or are you talking about just regular people out on that you would come in contact with out on the street or in public?
I'm talking about all of them. Because what you're really getting at how the white folks treat the black folks in West Virginia?
Well, you know what? Since you said it outright, I'd like to be able to get an understanding on how do whites perceive blacks in West Virginia.
Well, sometimes I wonder whether they perceive them at all. Because in my dealings with them, like anybody else, there are some that you could say that are okay. And there are others whose philosophy tends to be give them hell. I'm
Right.
talking about the white attitude toward the blacks. There are many deceptions in black-white relationships in West Virginia. Sometimes in a community, those blacks that have been there a long time probably feel halfway accepted. But a person who was coming in and was used to a different type of relationship with white people, as far as jobs and housing, health care, and those type of things that make life amenable to black people, they find it lacking in several degrees here.
Right, right.
Whereas a person who didn't live here, come from somewhere else, where they know what they're supposed to be getting and have a right to, they feel it's lacking.
Right.
Because see, in West Virginia, sometimes I think the real civil rights movement never got here.
Right, right. You had little glimpses of it,
Yes.
but not really out in the street.
No, not much. There was some in around college towns, like Bluefield State College in the southern part of the state. There was a civil rights movement. I remember demonstrations.
Right, right. And I
As
heard
a
about
young
that.
kid, yeah, I remember going to Bluefield and Kresge's and Woolworths and at the Colonial Theater and other places like that. I remember outright discrimination, and at the YMCA and at the a lot of those buildings like that.
You couldn't go into them places. You had to go.
Yeah, you could go in them, but you wouldn't receive equal treatment in them. For instance, I remember when I was a kid, and because I was born in McDowell County, and you get on a bus and you go to Bluefield to shop, because that was the boom town that was closest to us. Because in McDowell County, that Welch was the county seat, and they had something, but Bluefield was it at that time. And you go up there, and you couldn't even go to a restroom, except at the bus station in Bluefield, and that's way down on the lower end.
And you had the signs up, the colored and white signs. You remember that as a child coming up in that area of the state?
Oh yeah, definitely. I know that was.
That's a Jim Crow.
Reminded me of that. Yeah, I remember those signs. I remember when I was a small boy. One time I went up in the theater in the white bathroom for men. So they'd have colored men and colored women. They didn't have white though. I remember they had ladies and gentlemen signs. The sign said lady was for white women, and the sign said gentlemen was for white men, and the colored women, colored men. So I remember one day in the theater, I decided I'd go up there in the white men's bathroom because I wanted to see. I said, what's so different that they got a different bathroom from us? I just figured a bathroom was a bathroom, so I went up in the theater, and of course they came up there and told me to get out, but I went up there and I said, I don't understand this. That was crazy. I thought, to me, it was just useless because just have one for men, one for women. There wasn't no more people that could go in there. That two bathrooms will handle everybody. I said,
So West Virginia definitely adhered to the separate but equal, separate and unequal, but separate but equal. That's what.
well, yeah,
what it's supposed to
they
be.
used to call it separate but equal, but it was unequal, yes.
Right, right.
But now, when I remember going in that bathroom, they were just alike, really.
Right, right.
And I said, well, how come the white men got to go up there by themselves and stuff? You know, I mean, this is ridiculous. But I knew something was wrong because it didn't make sense.
Well, looking at the history of West Virginia, I was able to find out that West Virginia had one of the most developed segregated systems in terms of black schools and so forth throughout the state.
Oh yeah, it was like two separate groups. I mean, everything. Like at blacks, we had some ways, some of that stuff. It was better, really,
Than what it is now.
than it is now for blacks. Because when I was growing up, like you'd have they even had in some areas where it's large enough, they had a black hospital, they had a black drugstore, you know, and black churches. They still have black churches, though, but in some ways it was better. In an area where there are very few blacks, sometimes Separate Eagle worked out to our advantage.
Right, right. That was one of the things I wanted to get you to, because in the interview with Bankole, that was one of the things we talked about, was the fact that they conducted the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And they did an analysis on the state, checked out all its areas of civil rights, housing, employment, education, found out that black people were suffering gross disparities in every area possible in the state of West Virginia, where we're 3% of the population. At this time, Mount Olive is close to 80-85% black. Can't get a job, but you're being housed in the prison systems. And the issue for us at that time, in the interview, the issue was whether or not, what did we gain from Brown versus Bordenkercher, and what did we lose? Did we lose more than we gained? Because our kids come up now, they don't have the black teacher.
In some ways, I think we've gone back instead of progressing. 'Cause, well, now my grandkids stay with me, and I know it's like under the old system, if you were a good black student, now that was a certain amount of intra-racial discrimination too,
Right.
that we probably won't get into, whether you were light or whether you were dark complected and all like that. But if you were a black student in the black schools that I went to, and you showed academic promise, the teachers would take you aside and give you extra lessons, give you extra things to learn. I remember when I was in the junior high school, at Keystone Ekman Junior High School in McDowell County, I had an English and music teacher named Mrs. Wingfield, and we would write things in class. Anyhow, she recognized a certain amount of literary and academic talent in me. And so by the time I was in the 8th grade, I was reading. She gave me a book of complete works of Shakespeare. I was reading that.
She helped cultivate and helped encourage it.
Because she recognized
Right.
that type of talent within me. And she would give me these books. And she gave me a book by Shakespeare. And of course I read all of that. And I would come in at recess instead of going out playing. I'd go in there and we'd discuss it. I remember one of the first plays by Shakespeare I read was Titus Andronicus. I remember telling her, she said, "How did you like that book?" And I remember telling her, I said, "Those white people, that book crazy." I said, they're eating each other, they grind up their bones and eating them over. I enjoyed reading it because, to tell the truth, I thought white people were crazy anyway, because I didn't like the way they operated in society. And so I read it because I said, "Oh, well, this just proves it, that they really are crazy." Crazy. And so I read other books, but at the same time that I was doing that, when I took music from her, she would teach us the old spirituals, and we learned about the Fifth Jubilee things, and singing like that. And so I was getting a black side too. And then I would not only read Shakespeare, but I had a desire to read everything black I could, especially biographies. I would read those. At first, would be the ones we have all the time, like Booker T. Washington you know, people like that the what I call the major black historical figures. Oh, I'd read everything I could get my hands on. If it was black, I'd read it.
Now, would you, Booker T. Washington, you mentioned him. He spent time here in West Virginia.
A lot of time, yes.
And believe it or not, I had the opportunity to review some of the work by Larry Rowe, which he was involved with the Senate Select Committee in doing an evaluation on this state back in 2005 for the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. He notated a bunch of disparities in all areas, like I was talking about earlier, but he said Booker T. Washington was a beacon of black power within the state. And given the history, given more often than not, we perceive Booker T. Washington as being an accommodationist. And I was wondering, where could this white guy who grew up in Malden, West Virginia, get off saying that Booker T. Washington was a beacon of black power, although we hold him in high esteem for his institutional development work that he did in developing West Virginia State and Tuskegee, as well as the other historic black colleges. They're not that today. And I ask you, how did we get into the situation that we are in now, where you have a historically black college, West Virginia State, that is like 80% white, even though it's a historical black college? How did we get there?
Well, West Virginia State, President Wallace, who later became the president of West Virginia State College, he was an administrative assistant under another president that had that. And he wanted to make West Virginia State a living laboratory of racial relations.
Oh.
And to me, that was the beginning of handing West Virginia State College on a silver platter to the white folks.
Thank you for that comment, because that's exactly that's good talk right there. So in opening the door for integrations,
Yeah.
Good relationships between blacks and whites.
Well, they claim that his decision at that time opened the door for blacks to really come to West Virginia U. Because West Virginia State was the black college and it remained a college. Until recently, they made it West Virginia University after a lot of the whites went down there. But it opened the door for black people to come into West Virginia University. Because West Virginia at that time had two land-grant colleges. One for blacks, West Virginia State, one for whites, West Virginia University. And it opened the door for blacks to come to West Virginia U, particularly those seeking graduate studies. Because now, at one time, a black teacher, when he or she desired a master's degree, would go out of state.
Right.
They go to, Columbia and all kinds of schools like that.
The state would have to pay for it because they
would pay, yes. They would pay their tuition stuff. This opened the door for blacks to become educated at WVU.
Okay.
And so, again, depending on how you evaluate education, would you rather come to West Virginia University or to go to Columbia or some other school up north that has a long history of extremely fine academics that would admit blacks at the time? It's a strange thing,
Right.
Yeah, West Virginia and its choices. Also, I believe in some counties, because of the small number of blacks in West Virginia was actually paying more money